So I got this great question in comments maybe 2 days ago, and I realized I needed to answer it more publicly, maybe than just answering the person who asked the question. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit, and get rid of some of the black line. Well, maybe not that much. Here we go. So the question in comments was, and by the way, that's our lake where we're hoping maybe we'll have lake cross before this season is over. At any rate, if we do, we do. If we don't, we don't. So a question was asked in comments, where are the alpacas? And, I can certainly understand why that question was asked. When you have a channel name like Alpacamade, it lends itself to, expectations of some kind. Either you're going to see farm animals, or you're going to see products, or you're going to see something that has to do with alpacas. And that's fair. And it made me laugh. The question made me laugh because it surprised me that it took so long for somebody to ask the question. I've had the domain name now for 5 or so years and never have launched a website to date, although there is one sort of sitting in the can, waiting to be launched for product. I did that in late December and maybe halfway through January. Worked on that, tried to figure out, what kind of design I wanted and all the things that go with creating a website with the potential for commerce. But the core question, where are the alpacas, goes back to before I actually started using my YouTube channel as an active channel. You might see me in comments on homestead sites, or occasionally on lost my train of thought. Oh, crafting, artisan sites, that kind of thing. You'll see Alpacamade, and that's me, and it's my logo. But the product part is sort of a separate story. Before I moved here 3 years ago, a little less than 3 years ago, I had the great good fortune of belonging to an open art studio. It's a very unique place. You literally can walk in the front door and buy any of the artwork from the working artists, or you can walk in the front door and grab yourself a cup of coffee and go to the supply cabinets and pick and choose paints, markers, pencils, and magazines, glue, whatever, and collage or draw or paint or whatever. Or you could go to the ceramics studio in the basement, and you could learn pottery. There was an artist in residence, even though we didn't have that title at the time, who was a leather worker. He was nationally known, and he had come from living in New Orleans for decades, come to Michigan. So he taught me a little bit about leather work then. They also had looms. And so when I first encountered this art studio, by literally walking in the front door as a stranger, I saw the looms and I immediately was fascinated because learning to weave had been a lifelong goal. And so eventually, over a period of 2 years or so, we had to rotate turns on the looms. So I finally learned the basics. I learned how to warp a loom so that I would have, I'd be ready to weave. I didn't get into patterns too much in weaving because I was still very much a novice. Weaving is something you have to spend, a great deal of time learning and understanding how patterns, just like knitting or crocheting, actually, now that I think about it, you have to learn how the patterns actually work out and what to do to make those patterns successful and how to correct your mistakes, just like crocheting and knitting. So, in the times when I couldn't get on the loom, I would do other things. I would knit and crochet. I was mostly a fiber artist at the time. But over the years, I spent more and more time, or I divided more and more of my time in this studio every day, 6 hours a day, um, with organizational projects and little building projects and that kind of thing to help keep the studio itself functioning. And that's what I was doing when I was winding down to move here to the lake. I was doing strictly organizational and sorting and cleaning because I didn't want to start any big project and then try and transport it here in pieces. That I just knew that was a recipe for disaster. So in those intervening years, I also acquired my own loom. It was a jack loom, and a jack loom is meant to be stored. You can kind of fold it. It's sort of, it folds like a folding table, a TV tray with that sort of scissor mechanism. And mine was pretty big. It was 13 feet from the breast beam back to the place where all the yarn was warped or wound anyway to be woven off. And but when because it was theoretically portable, when you folded it up, it was only a whopping 5 feet. So it was too big for me to transport. And when I planned to move here to near, where I'm at now, I only thought I was going to be in the little white box for a year, 2, 3 at the most. And then I would be raising chickens and ducks and, little by little adding livestock and maybe alpacas, who knew? Depending on where, what the property actually lent itself to. But like many things in life, just because we want something, just because we dream of something, and I had been dreaming of some kind of homestead for more than 20 years, it doesn't always happen. For whatever reason, there are lots of reasons. People of faith, I think, maybe don't take enough into account how much God protects them from making mistakes or being hurt, and spend maybe too much time blaming God for something they really wanted and worked for and were willing to put the effort and sweat into that never materializes. And prayer as well. Effort, sweat, and prayer. So Alpacamade, as it stands today, I no longer have a loom. I still have plenty of crochet hooks and knitting needles of all descriptions, but a product made from alpaca fiber just really isn't in the cards right now because I have two different forms of arthritis. I have basal thumb arthritis in my right hand. I'm right hand dominant. And I have something that feels like arthritis, but I'm not really sure. Maybe it's a long-term injury in all those little small bones right where your hand and your wrist join. That was my leash hand for my beautiful shepherd. And maybe I injured it, trying to teach her to heel because she was an awful puller. It was great because we made a little wagon for her and she could actually pull the wagon, no problem. But my hand, trying to teach her to heel, may have taken a beating that will take longer to heal than I thought at the time. So Alpacamade now is kind of a little bit of DIY, a little bit of road trip. A friend of mine and I tried some retail arbitrage and some resale from auctions and garage sales and stuff like that. And the truth of the matter is we don't have between us enough room for an inventory that would sustain the effort. It's a tough business to be in, and if you don't really have a specialty niche where you can count on your specialty bringing you consistent income, one bad shipping calculation can sink the ship. So, that's kind of the story of Alpacamade. It started out as a dream that acquired a name and a website and a YouTube channel and kind of languished as I moved, and now is finding its feet again. If there are projects or, little mini tutorials that you would like to see, if you'd like me to do some simple weaving, I can do that. I can do some knit stitches and so forth. I can do some crochet, but I can't do a lot until I know that my hands are not going to suffer from it. I've tried to give them a rest now for over a year. Nevertheless, thanks for sitting and having coffee with me and a little chat. I hope you are in good health and that your family is in good health and that you are enjoying God's blessings. Until I see you again, take care.